If it were in Brazil, it would be impossible. But even here in Europe, I'm sure that there are very, very few chairs that have lasted as long as 20 years. So all of us from Brazil ought to thank you very much for that. Well, I wouldn't ever say goodbye without leaving some notes on research that is needed for a better understanding of the geopolitics of backyard. What's the geopolitics of backyard? It's strongly felt in Mexico. Strongly felt in Mexico, but it's not just Mexico. The presence of U.S. geopolitics and dealing with Latin America as its backyard is something that we ought to take a close look. We ought to study deeply without any ideological type of thing. Obviously, that Trump makes it very easy for this raising the agenda. But despite of Trump, we ought to take a look at that. We also have to take a look at Trump's complex do cachorro vira-lata. You know, what does it make Brazil to think that, well, this feeling of being a nobody? Darcy Ribeiro has pointed out that this has to do with the way the Portuguese mixed with the native women and procreated. And whoever would come out of this procreation process was not a native, because a fatherhood was the one that would establish your ethnic background. And was not a Portuguese either, because they didn't recognize us. So this Mameluco was a nobody. So it might be, but I think we should take a look at why this has been lasting so long. It's already 500 years since that. We have to take a closer look into the collusion of big media and law power. Obviously, this has been expanding tremendously in the past 3 years, but it's something that ought to be out of this whole first political dispute. We ought to take a look at this. And we also have to take a look at the demonization of development. And its main, is there such a word as demonization? Yes. Become demon. Okay? Development, its main source in Brazil's economic history, the developmental state. I'm going to single out one author, Eugênio Goudin. Eugênio Goudin is very brilliant Brazilian economist, represent Brazil in the Bretton Woods Agreement, and but he had 3 instances in which he was very, very much very strong against doing something different in Brazil. Under Vargas, there was a big controversy. Goudin, Simonsen, Roberto Simonsen trying to push for industrialization, and Goudin said, no, what we ought to do is keep on producing coffee, because we are good at producing coffee. And then we can obviously import anything else we need, because we can afford. So it was under Simonsen, and Simonsen was really trying to push industrialization as a private person. Okay? Then Goudin was also very strong critic of Kubitschek's industrialization process. He said, then stop with this thing. You know, why to bring junk from Europe in order to produce automobiles if we can buy the best automobiles from the United States? I mean, you know, he stopped this nonsense. And he was even more strong. He opposed more strongly in the 70s the so-called state-owned driven industrialization under Geisel. Okay, so he was on 3 of these guys. He went into some other cosmic space, so he was not able to do any criticism of Lula and Dilma's work, but he left a couple of hairs, one of them, Samuel Pessoa, who has been very critical both of the development state and very, very critical of the 1988 Constitution. Samuel Pessoa is one of these very well-known Brazilian academic economists, but he says Brazil cannot afford the social rights established in the Constitution. And then my question is always, why in the heck do we want to be the sixth industrial, seventh or eighth industrial power in the world if we cannot educate our young people, if we cannot provide universal health care? So, but again, we ought to take a look at these guys because they have always been very influential, both in academic and being very respected also through the press and through politicians and so forth and so on. I think that there are some movies as inspiration for committed thought. One of them is O Longo Amanhecer. O Longo Amanhecer is about Celso Furtado's drive for industrialization. Very well made documentary on all the things that he tried. Then, for those that don't every once in a while hear the voice of Bolsonaro or Doria and so forth, and about the possibility of once again have the military running Brazil, or if it's not the military, it can be somebody from the República de Curitiba. It's always nice to take a look at the day that lasts 21 years. And obviously there are two recent movies, Que Horas Ela Volta and Boi Leão. And what I would like to draw your attention is that neither of these movies would be able to be made, the theme would never be able to be explored if there were not the changes in the 21st century. I mean, the idea that a woman from the Northeast would come south in order to compete for a place in the very famous Universidade de São Paulo, in the School of Architecture, is something that would be non-thinkable 15 years ago. What a Northeastern woman could achieve at the most was to do just like the mother of the student did, would come to São Paulo to be a maid, a middle class. And obviously Boi Leão is something that also would not be able, because Boi Leão is all about modernization in the Northeast. And 15 years ago, most of the movies about the Northeast was, how in the heck do I get out of the Northeast and move to São Paulo? Okay? So these are my final remarks, and I think we do have some time. I hope we have some time for questions. No, really? You did not tell me.
I did.
She came here just to tell me there was 5 minutes to go.
Fine.
I thought you were saying that was okay. Okay.
Thank you, Arlindo, for a most inspiring speech. I think you gave us all quite a quick overview of some main historical moments of Brazil, and some people with a lot of ideas who unfortunately did not have enough clout to be able to develop these ideas, but some of them stuck. And of course you have some people who say, well, we should not develop because why should we develop? Others are doing that and we have our own production. But I mean, when you speak about this complexo vira-lata, I would like to remind you of Gilberto Freire. I'm not too much a fan of Gilberto Freire, but the way he describes in how Casa Grande e Senzala, how just because of the mixture of all these races, the Brazilian is a very special person. I think Brazilians maybe should remember that book a bit more and that chapter a bit more, and instead of saying, oh, we are nothing, we are something completely different, we are something completely innovative, because we are the mixture of quite a number of different people, which gives a kind of new person with a lot of innovative ideas, as you have shown us. So I think that should be remembered a bit more. Okay, but I think we have a couple of minutes for a couple of questions before we move to the brasserie to have some drinks. So is there anybody? Yes, of course, Raymond.
Yes, one thing I would like to ask you was Mexican development, let's say after the revolution and up until now. On the one hand an example, and on the other hand a warning for Brazil.
Good question, yes.
Well, very good question. I think that we do not have maquilas, but obviously we do not have the border with the United States. So there will be no construction business for building a wall in Brazil. Okay? But obviously we ought to take a look at it, because Mexico is much more connected with its Latin American neighbors, has been historically, because of its native people and Mayas, and more with its southern neighbors, Central America, than Brazil has been with its neighbors in South America. So I think that one good thing that we ought to do is to approximate ourselves more and more and more of our neighbors, or even of those who are not geographical neighbors, but which are. And I think there is one initiative under Fernando Henrique Cardoso's government which we ought to pursue, is the infrastructure of South America. There was an initiative. So we ought to do that. Now, this is a tremendous challenge for Brazil. Why? Because Brazil has to swim across the Atlantic in order to keep its African roots. And at the same time, it has to move up 700 meters to get to São Paulo, then move all the way, go all across the Andes in order to get to the Pacific. So the challenges for Brazil in this sense are tremendous. And it's something that we ought to do in a way that we do not appear just as a superpower, but as a good cooperation process for the countries in South America. In North America, it's hard. The presence of the United States and the fact that Canada and Mexico are so dependent, it doesn't leave much room there.
Yes, I agree with you, because the point is that up to the 1950s, Brazil was with its back to the Spanish-American countries.
Yeah.
And in countries like Peru and Bolivia, they were definitely afraid of Brazil at that time.
And it's very interesting to notice that Brazil has its back both to its Latin American countries and back to the Blue Amazon.
Yes.
So these are the challenges of the 21st century for Brazil. We ought to look at our Blue Amazon. We ought to develop and, well, I give the floor to Marianne, and I would strongly recommend it to read a article that she has. It's going to be published where? When?
Espaços urbanos.
Yeah, it's coming soon. But it's very important because, and I always mention this because in Brazil we do not pay attention to the Blue Amazon.
The Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, with that tremendous ocean. So these are the challenges that we have to do. But we have to break with past patterns. We have to disinvolve, lose involvement with some patterns of the past.
Okay. Patricio.
Arlindo, thank you very much for your presentation. Listening to your presentation and looking at the pictures there, I get the impression that when most of the authors say, well, we have a very strange state. It's strange because it has a special relation with the bourgeoisie, the entrepreneurial groups, etc. At that moment, I was wondering, well, that is the very nature of capitalism in the entire world. In the Netherlands, in Belgium, in the United States, in Great Britain, South Korea, Singapore, everywhere where you say capitalism, you see a state which is cooperating with the dominant groups and creating that kind of development. And I was thinking, what's wrong about that? In the sense that, indeed, if you want to compete and to be part of and want to be an industrialized country, like coming from the South, I think that the international experience, think about South Korea or other countries, has been time and again a kind of cooperation, accommodation between the national state and both international and national capitalist groups, because I don't see in the tradition of the world has been the dominant combination in order to get capitalist development in a sense. And my impression is, it's not only from Brazil, but all other countries also in Latin America, that we're challenging that idea, we're trying to define that idea, trying to create a kind of different type of capitalism. And time and again, we have to see at the end of the day, and maybe it's what Brazil is seeing today with the economic crisis, that whether we like it or not, if you want to be an industrial capitalist country, you will require that very strange relationship between the state and the entrepreneurial group. Or is another way, because you talk about the developmental state, but the developmental state also can include those groups, and in practice, has been the case. The entire military government in Brazil was an alliance between local, international, and the state bureaucracies. So, again, what is wrong about that?
Well, thank you very much for a very important question. If I gave you any impression at all that what I'm looking for is a
sorry, not you, but the authors, because many of the authors, 2 or 3, mentioned that it was a little bit crazy, that relationship.
Well, it is crazy in the sense that yes, we want you to finance us, but no, we don't want Brazil to have an autonomous type of development. So this is the message, and this is the message from Fernando Henrique Cardoso when he was a sociologist. This is the message of Fiore when he looks at the state. So capitalism in Brazil, just like capitalism in Korea, cannot strive on the sort of an entrepreneurship that it was exploited by Schumpeter. I mean, there has to be something different. Now, what seems strange is that exactly this private capital, which profits so much, why are they against the developmental state? That's the main question. Why if they cannot break with this dependence from multinationals, they don't break with this dependence on the idea that yes, what we ought to do. If you look at right now, what are the forces behind anything that's taking place in the Congress? One of is the bancada do boi, soybean and export of raw materials. I mean, that's what these guys want to do. They don't want the BNDES to be going for a new type of industrialization, deepening out. That's the topic here. That's what Fernando Henrique Cardoso tried to strive. And if you look at now the policies that are what are the criticisms that we have? The criticism that, well, the government once again wanted to push forward, including financing diversification of export, both of airplanes and of construction business. So there's a criticism on that. What's wrong with that? That's the main question. Brazilian capitalism needs to make investment in South America. Brazilian capitalism needs to make investment in Africa. Brazilian capitalism needs to improve infrastructure in South America. What's wrong with it? So it's wrong for Lula and Dilma to support the construction of a logistic point in Cuba. But it's right for Obama to go there and do it. So this ideological thing is, I think, but this is the most important for us to think. And I'm talking about Brazil, but many times we can see that also in Colombia, and we can see also in Chile sometimes.
But ideological goes in both ways. For instance, it's possible in Brazil to open, just as an example, the airplane market in order to allow foreign airplanes to operate in the Brazilian market, and I get the impression that people say no, because that has to be, I think that's one of the problems in the transportation within the Brazil.
There has been this association of done with other
an open space policy to say we are going to set 10, 20.
Like where do you have this totally open space?
Not totally there.
Yeah. So we are that way. So because if we're going to be radical, where is that total space open? I don't find it.
No, definitely not. There's one of the problems in the United States now.
Yeah.
You get kicked off of planes. Yes.
Yeah.
Briefly, because I think
briefly.
we should go
Just
to...
on that last point, I think I understand the new administration lowered the national capital requirement for players in the domestic civil aviation market, so I think it's been further liberalised. But just a general point, I very much like your opening, looking at Schumpeter and his idea of qualitative change and technological change as drivers of development. I think it's a fundamental starting point. And you kind of wonder now where Brazil is at the moment, where future growth can come from, which is going to involve diversification and technological change. And I just wondered what sense you have sectorally as to where the economy might go in the next 20 to 30 years.
As it's now, even my crystal ball will not be able to say much, because we all know what have been the driving forces between technological capabilities in Brazil. State-owned enterprise. Either by doing it directly or by supporting technological development. Brazil nowadays has a tremendous technological capability in hydroelectric power. Okay, or the branch. Okay, that's true. But obviously, it will not exist now. And now, has BNDES, has FINEP tried to support new technologies in the private sector? Yes, it has done so. In nanotechnology, has done that support. Support the group Votorantim in order to do that. Foster that. Into this, new wave of things. What did Votorantim Group do with the investment that was subsidized by FINEP, subsidized by BNDES, when the financial crisis was in the horizon? It sold to Monsanto. So this is the sort of thing that, and I'm not accusing Votorantim of its private day, but we ought to look at something different. We want to look at a different model. Obviously, I did have a lot of hope on entrepreneurship that would spring out of universities expansion, technical schools expansion, but now that they have been frozen, I don't know how much hope I can still comprise them. But I think that we ought to look at, and this is something that we ought to do as Brazilianists or interested on the Brazilian development model.
Thank you, Arlindo. I think we could go on discussing that, but I suggest that we go to the brasserie here next to here and have a drink and maybe go on discussing one or other topics, development in Brazil, and how we can stimulate or what ideas we have to get more development.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we all want it.
Thank you very much for being here. Let's go to the next room, to the brasserie, and we will have a glass of wine or something else.
Minha querida, eu fiquei...
Usted nunca me filmó nada. Lo tengo que fumar en dudas. Como yo no tengo, pero no está bueno. Recuerda que nos dio el clipé. Eso, que yo había que quebrar esa parte que veía. Pero cuando no pasa nada, tenemos que hacer nada. Pero hagamos, te mando un email. A
la holandesa. Sí.